Greetings, I am Tom Earl. On this week's episode, we talk having the courage to ask bigger questions with Dr. Brian McElderry. Check it out. Woo! Greetings, I am Tom Earl, and this is my year of adventure. We know you could be anywhere, so the fact that you are here today, sharing your greatest gifts, your time and energy, means the world to me. I hope you know that in this moment, you are valued, you are loved, and you are appreciated just as you are. As you can see, I am not alone. I have an amazing guest. He goes by the name of Dr. Brian McElderry. How's it going today, Dr. Brian?
It's going wonderful, Tom. I appreciate the introduction. I'm so excited to be here. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, I'm so glad we were able to find the time to connect and make this happen. So my
Love
gratitude
it.
right from the beginning. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So for the few folks out there who aren't aware of the awesome work that you're doing, do you mind if I introduce them to you via your epic bio?
Yeah, sure. Let's hear it.
Dr. Brian McElderry is a holistic life coach, business mentor, and speaker. After taking himself through his own mind and body transformation, Dr. McElderry was inspired to adopt a more holistic approach to helping others shift and evolve into the best version of themselves. Through neuro-linguistic programming, Dr. McElderry coaches consultants with executives, high-performing professionals, companies, and leaders on how to effectively manage their lives to maximize their potential and perform at the highest level. The core premise of his work is to empower and teach each person he encounters to take control of their mind, body, and life by investing in themselves. As a result, they will see significant improvement not only in their health, but a positive impact on their family, friends, spouses, business, and career. Damn! That's how you do it if you're going to have a bio.
Oh my goodness. It's good to be on this half, man. Just to hear that sometimes. So I appreciate it, Tom.
Yeah, definitely. So I don't want to make any presumptions. So how do you
Yeah.
like to be addressed? Dr. Brian, Dr. McElderry?
Gosh, man, I get it all the time. And I think the further I've been removed from attaining that doctorate, I'm like, man, I just want to feel normal, right? So I tell people, Tom, you're more than welcome. Just call me Brian. Sometimes if the setting calls for it, I might include that on there. But right here, we're going to open up and hopefully help some people that are listening. So Brian's fine.
I dig that. I dig that. So let's start then with that kind of tone, with that intention. So a
Yeah.
bio, is the shining light, the awesome part of our lives, right? But we want to know, if we were your friend, if we were hanging out with you, we were quarantined together, whatever it might be, if we really knew Brian, what is something that we would know that a bio could never tell us?
Oh my goodness. I think the first thing that I get is that I'm this extrovert. I am naturally introverted. I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama, born and raised. Um, Small family, in my personal opinion, just me, my dad, my mom, and my brother, my younger brother. And we kind of had this traditional middle class life. I will say I was blessed to have that. And we just went on this traditional route of what success looked like. My parents provided for me, but they said, what do you want to be when you grow up? Right. And I think that's the biggest, hardest question that you can throw on a child nowadays, because you're forced and there's not this kind of exploration phase. So, of course, I was like, man, I want to be a pro athlete. So I played sports growing up, which my bio didn't say, and that's kind of where I got a lot of my principles. And but academics were very highly stressed in my household. So I matriculated through adolescence into high school, and I ended up playing golf actually from my dad. So that's something interesting as well. And I learned a lot of principles from that game, and I actually got a golf scholarship to many different schools, and I ended up going to Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia. So that's where I got my bachelor's in science and chemistry. And then I went on to pharmacy school directly after that and got my doctorate in pharmacy. So it seems like we can dive a little bit deeper, Tom, here. But for some people, they look at that bio, right, and they'll say that story sounds very like successful, right? And that word success can be defined in so many different ways. And that's a lot of intertwining of what I considered very pivotal points in my life, to where I had to shift, I had to change, I had to kind of evolve, as my bio said, to really learn more about who Brian is and not the external factor of what people saw or wanted me to be. Right. So that's a little bit about, me and kind of the little personal piece. But yeah, there's a lot of things that happened growing up that kind of shaped me into who I am.
I love that. And I want to jump into, if you're cool with it, a little bit of
Yeah, of course. Let's dive in.
Just want to pause though. I always like asking people had the honor to go to really distinguished and historic colleges like you did. What was your experience like at Morehouse?
Wow, great question. That's one question I really haven't been asked, Tom, so I appreciate that. For those that don't know, I always get two reactions, and I tell people if I went to Morehouse, they're like, oh, okay. And I'm like, you must not know what it is. Or I get, oh, wow, right? So it's a historically Black college and university in Atlanta, Georgia, esteemed alum or Martin Luther King Jr., Spike Lee, and others that I think are pivotal in the community, that have paved the way. So for me, it's an all male institution. So that was one thing that kind of, I think, was a very eye-opening thing for me, is that I wasn't the smartest in the room anymore. And since it was a historically Black college and university, it was actually diverse. We had people of Caucasian descent, we had Asian, we had just all different types, Hispanic. But for me, the men around me played a huge pivotal role, I think, as men can attest to, that if you don't have that mentorship or camaraderie or men that you can really open up and be vulnerable to and really talk about hard issues, you get distracted, especially in college. I mean, Spelman, which is a historically Black college and university that is predominantly female, it was right next door, but just imagine yourself being in a room or surrounded by men at all times that, you just saw what that looked like to be successful and what it meant to be, as we called it then, a Renaissance man. So my experience there was great. And I think it really shaped who I am today.
That's awesome. Well, just wanted to touch base on that.
Of course.
So is that where what did you start studying? Is that where you got into, let me study philosophy? Is that where you got into neuro-linguistic programming? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So no, none of that. Coincidentally, my favorite subjects were psychology and sociology. I was a chemistry major, and I only went into that because I had made a decision in high school that I wanted to be some type of doctor. It didn't occur to me that it took 8 years plus to actually get that, and how much debt you would incur. So I said, oh, great. I'm going to be a chemistry major, because I decided on pharmacy. There was actually a pharmacist that played a really impactful role in my family's life, because they were taking care of my grandmother. I actually remember going to the pharmacy and picking up medications with my mom and my grandmother, and I saw how the pharmacist treated, my family. And I said, man, that's the kind of autonomy I want. That's the kind of impact I want, is that personal touch. And it's just not like that today, unfortunately, because it's become so big pharma and business focused. But that's where it started for me in school. But it goes back to the story, right, of, you try to avoid things, but they come back later in life. And now I see, wow, I was running from something that I really enjoyed, which was people and understanding how people react to environments, which comes into, the practices and modalities I use through neuro-linguistic programming.
That's an interesting nuance you brought up, that it is true that when you think of historically, the local pharmacist was more or less like a staple of the community, someone that you didn't have to have an appointment to go see. And now when I think of when I'm in a pharmacy, I have my more business organizational hat on of, this is really just a business of having to manage a production line. So wow, that's a really interesting, I didn't expect us to have that aha, but I have had it.
Yes.
Okay. So is it a an MD, or what do you have to get for the doctor part to work as a pharmacist?
Yeah. So it's still a doctorate. A lot of people have come to know it now as a doctorate, and it's a little bit more well respected because it wasn't always that way. In the late 90s, you weren't able to get a doctorate in pharmacy. So it's very early on. It's not that old, just over 20 years to where a pharmacist actually has a doctorate. Before it was just a bachelor's in pharmacy. So there are a lot of older pharmacists that don't have their doctorate. So it's a very interesting fact that people didn't know that. So it's a 4-year degree. Just like you would go through medical school, we had the same rigor. I remember going through rotationals, my last year of rotations in pharmacy school, and being on rounds, which are, you're going around seeing the patients as you do maybe on Grey's Anatomy, if people aren't familiar with the healthcare space. But the pharmacist is right there with the medical professionals. And I remember the medical students like asking us questions as pharmacy students because they just did not have the the pharmacological knowledge base around how the medication worked, alternatives, is there a drug interaction? Like, what should we prescribe? So um, I noticed that, wow, we have a high level of knowledge just on the level of a medical doctor. We just can't prescribe, and the pharmacy industry is working on that now and getting more of that status. And there are some states that can have that prescriber status for certain things. But yeah, it's becoming more well respected now, but there's still a lot of things being worked around in the profession.
So you go through this, I think if you're aware of this process at all for folks, a really rigorous and gruesome process.
Yeah.
You're on the stage where whoever shakes your hand and you get the thing put on you, you now have your doctorate.
Yeah.
Your family maybe is in the stadium. What's going through your mind? Take us to that day.
Wow. This is where the transparency comes out, Tom. And anyone listening, this is where the first kind of shift or story begins to evolve is, 2 days prior to my pharmacy school graduation, my grandmother passed away. So, I got the call from my mom, who was actually headed up to St. Louis from Alabama on the plane. And she said, hey, she didn't make it. And my mind just went, all over the place because she was battling with medication issues, meaning management of medications by her healthcare team. So I want you to imagine, if you're listening and watching right now, you're about to graduate. You're supposed to be this drug expert and you're supposed to help people. And you have this kind of viewpoint now of the industry before you even enter it, that someone that you cared about, that you loved, that raised you in a sense, they were mismanaged and you couldn't do anything about that. So me crossing the stage, there's a picture of me. I actually was kissing up to the sky, as I was shaking the hand. So that was a pivotal moment for me to say, I've got to make a change and a difference. And I don't know what that's going to look like now. Is it going to be in people's behavior as I'm doing now? Is it going to be in people's purpose? How am I going to heal? Because now it's looking completely different than just being the person at the counter, behind the counter, educating the patients. So that's where my, mentality was when that happened. So it's a little bit different than others. I was celebrating, but it was a different moment for me.
Well, and I have to, maybe I'm venturing a guess that, when we start to talk about healthcare, we have to talk about the intersection of things like class and race, especially with COVID going on. We know Black and brown communities are disproportionately impacted, but that's been the case with healthcare from the beginning. What was that like for you entering into this field? So you shared what just happened to your grandma. Maybe I'm making an incorrect assumption. I'd imagine a graduate of Morehouse that there's a instillment of social justice or community service in there.
Yeah.
Was that in your heart or your mind or in your intention as you were going into the field as well?
Wow. Great question, Tom. I'm liking this already. Great question. I think that, yes, that was. And I love that you asked that because, I think people are gaining a better awareness or understanding of the disparity that's going on because we have a lot of suppression going on in our society. So me even entering into pharmacy school, I was one of I think 15 African American students in a class of 300 or 400. So me going from, this proud, diverse, very prominent institution and coming in and kind of being that new guy and me having to establish this sense of self and who I was, that's when I knew how important a foundation was in my late teens, early 20s. So me going into this, it just set the tone. But also me crossing that stage knew that, I was, not only one of 15, I think it was a little bit more at that time, who crossed the stage as an African-American doctor of pharmacy, but I was also a Black male, which was another kind of barrier. But I never let that define me per se. I just knew and embodied that, right? So I never let that be a kind of this excuse or barrier. I just knew that that was something that, hey, Brian, this is you, and show up as the best version of you. So maybe somebody that maybe had some type of experience with an African-American male or female or the culture in general, allow them to see a different version. And that was always my goal, to say, wow, maybe my viewpoint or maybe how I was raised, I just had a different experience around the African-American culture. But Brian, maybe you're not different, but you're showing me a different version of how we aren't different necessarily. We just have different experiences growing up. So yes, that played a pivotal role that I always knew.
Okay, so I appreciate you sharing that perspective.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so going in, you graduate, you have all this that we just talked about. You enter into the pharmacy industry. Your field that you've worked up to.
Yep.
Was it amazing? Where you're like, yes, best decision ever?
Yeah. So I got the letter, the offer letter that everyone kind of waits for. And we're always taught in pharmacy school, at least some of our professors said, hey, you're going to be, 6-figure pharmacist, you're going to make the big bucks and all this kind of stuff. And, that me knowing what I know now, instilling the embodiment of you've made it or you've settled upon this one mark, it kind of creates this ceiling effect, right? So my excitement was, shoot, I'm about to buy a house, buy a car, do all this stuff, right? And I just remember I remember studying and training to become a pharmacist, because you have to take boards, you have to train, you have to do all these things to be ready to practice. And I remember a point during that summer that I was actually studying alternative health, and I was studying alternative ways because my grandmother was still in my mind, right? So if everyone was studying and focusing on practicing and focusing on the house, my motive had changed. So that's where, and we'll get into this, where my first business started, which was, as you maybe heard, in the health coaching space. And I just remember I've got to figure out a way to make this happen. And there was a short span of the practice of pharmacy, or back actually being behind the counter for me, before it completely switched in less than a year. So that was kind of my tenure, I guess, in the actual pharmacy realm, is because it impacted me so much that I tell my clients, I tell people now that the only time is now. The quicker you can start something, it doesn't matter if, you need to build stuff up. If you have a feeling like, and the why is deep enough, go into it. So yeah, that was how my post-graduation feeling felt like.
So it sounds like it went from what they're teaching you in pharmacy is like, hey, get out there, make that money, become like more or less, I don't mean this disrespectful, but like part of the system.
Yes.
And then you made the mistake of getting a mission. You found something you were passionate about.
I did. And it was a very lonely road, man, to be honest with you. People thought I was crazy. They didn't understand what I was doing. They didn't understand coaching. They didn't understand like entrepreneurship, even though my mom is an entrepreneur. It's wild. So there's a whole road that we can talk about that transitional period. But yeah, it was a lonely road, to be honest with you. And that's where I learned a lot about myself.
Yeah, I think you should take us into it if you're willing to.
Yeah, of course, of course, of course.
Just so we can set the stage from, because
Yep.
I bet a lot of folks right now are going
Mm,
through some sort of forced
yes.
outside or inside transition, right?
Yes.
And so the amount of time and energy you put into getting this doctorate with the
Mm,
we kind of highlighted some of that maybe, I don't know if it was pressure, responsibility, weight, all of that stuff.
yeah.
You get out there and it's like, okay, now I finally get to put this into action. I finally get to reap the rewards of all
Hmm.
of this, no sleep, constant memorization, all
Yeah.
the bullshit you probably had to put up with.
Yep.
And then
Yep.
take us. And then what?
Yeah. 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 So that's the first question I got is, do you feel like you wasted time, you wasted money, you took out student loans, and it's not cheap. It's not cheap. It's truly an investment. And I couldn't go into this rut. If I was going to move forward, I can't relish on the past of woulda, coulda, shoulda. And that's the first mentality that I had is saying, okay, that was a season of your life. And if anyone's feeling right now, external pressure, some sense of like a gut feeling that they should be doing something different. This purpose word, especially going through COVID right now and social injustice, there's been a lot of people that have been furloughed. There have been a lot of people that have their jobs cut completely, their positions downgraded, and they're scared. I know when the stock market hit, people were like, oh my gosh, like I'm gonna have to work for the rest of my life now because I thought I had myself set up. And for me, I said the best thing, practicality steps for people to do is always be flexible and adaptable. If you can keep that mentality at all times and understand that there's going to be another stock market crash, there's going to be another recession, there's going to be another depression potentially in our lifetime, then if you understand that, then you can understand how to handle fear and how to handle pain and disappointment. And I think a lot of people look for motivation. And I'll say this, Tom, that I don't like that word because motivation stems from an external trigger, right? I need motivation, meaning like you're subconsciously telling yourself you need to look outside of yourself. And if you're listening right now, you can maybe feel that if you wake up and I'm like, I need to find motivation, I need to look for it, when really it's internal. So I tell people to gain inspiration from the things of a deeper why. Like, what do you enjoy? Who do you want to impact? Is it because of family? Do you want to take care of your kids? Like, there needs to be a deep, deep stem there. And a lot of people, I feel like, are living in this kind of matrix to where they don't want to go in the past, they don't want to deal with the future, but they don't know how to be present. And it's this battle, and you feel like you're on this island of like, what should I do? And everyone's running around scatterbrained. And that's where a lot of mental illness, the mental health comes into play, and the confusion, the not wanting to do anything, all that. So that's the first step I took, is really dealing with myself and my perseverance and those personal development tools. And I invested in my first business coach, my first business mentor. So that's where that next step happened. If you're wondering, like, Brian, okay, get to it. That's where that next step happened, is once I found out I need support, I need help, I need to follow somebody that's done this, because no one in my space understands me or is trying to help me. So I invested in my first coach. And within 7 months, 8 months, I was full-time. I could take care of myself. I was moving in the right direction, and it was a scary feeling because I was also in a relationship at that time, a long-standing relationship for about 7 or 8 years. And for anyone that's battling with that as well, we can talk through that too, of how to deal with relationships and your loved ones, your spouse, and pursuing your dreams and your purpose as well.
What would you say, we were talking about having a deeper why?
Yes.
What was the why that changed for you,
Mm.
had you at this stage of your life pivot? And it sounds like
Yep.
in a way that added a lot of blessings, but was kind of maybe like tore a lot of things apart, or a lot of new things came. You had to move on from certain things. What would you say was the why that changed?
The why for me stemmed from this thought. I remember having a dream, and it was this thought about, and we're being very transparent here. It was, if something happened to me tomorrow, if I left this earth unexpectedly, how do I want to be remembered? What legacy do I want to leave? What impact do I want to leave? And when I began thinking about it, I told myself that, Brian, you've been living at the standards or at the checkpoints of life for other people, right? I look back and I remember this thought, and it took a lot of meditation time. It took a lot of kind of diving into self, that I remember that question that I talked about at the beginning. Hey, Brian, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to do? And I felt pressure going into high school. And all I said, like, this is how I made my decision. All I said was, man, I'm good at science. Like, what stems from science? Oh, a doctor, right? There was never like this exploration at all. So that's where my why stem from, is really saying that, wow, I have really been living someone else's life, even though it was my choice, right? It was my choice. I don't blame it on anyone else. But I said that, man, I was doing checkpoints to have status for others around me, to say, my son's a doctor, my friend's a doctor, my friend's a pharmacist, for them to brag upon me. And again, not for any blame if I have my parents or anyone listening that knows me, but it's really that self-reflection that said, Brian, you chose not for you, but for others.
So let's say I'm listening, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure people are in a couple different areas of this why conversation. So let's start with one of them. Maybe I'm listening right now and I'm saying to myself, what is my why?
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's say they were here saying to you, Brian, that was really inspiring. I don't know what my why is. How would you talk with them?
Yeah. So I had this modality. It's like a 3-pronged system here. And there's different buckets that you can put in. And the first question I ask people is, what are your interests? So when you're trying to discover your why or your purpose, what are your interests naturally? And you put it in this one circle. So if you're listening, if you're watching right now, you can draw this out. One circle would be, what are your interests? The next circle would be, well, what in the world am I good at? What skill sets do I have? Can I write well? Can I speak well? Have people talked to me and said, hey, you're a great listener. You're a great communicator. Are you good at math? Like, are you a good fisher? Are you a good golfer? Whatever it is, what are your skill sets? And then the third piece would be, well, what problem in the world can I solve? Like, what interests me? I know a lot of problems have come up during these times that people are like, man, I didn't know I was this passionate about this, right? Until it came up to the surface. So once you put those 3 buckets, you'll see an intersection in the middle. And that's where I tell people that's where your purpose is, because you begin to pull from those pieces, and you tell yourself that, wow, here's the problem. Here's what my interests are. And then here's what I'm kind of good at. And you try to find somewhere where that intersection happens to say, well, who's on the other side of that problem or that service that I can go help right now? Who can I speak to? And you'll find that's where volunteering happens, when people start to volunteer or do mission trips, or they have some job that they really, really enjoy. And if you ask the person in that job what they really enjoy, all those things will fall in those buckets. So I think people just they look at the title, or they look at the money on the end of that, because they have to provide and they have to protect, right? But it doesn't happen. Those things will fall on the wayside if you're not happy.
Well, I want to suggest folks who are in that box that you hit that 15-second rewind button on your phone and really draw out what Brian just walked you through, because that was awesome. Go through it, take a screenshot, DM Brian with it if you want. Is it okay if people DM you their photo?
Yeah.
Start the conversation, have it go a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
So I got distracted. Are y'all blending the cherries? My daughter's having cherries for the first time today.
Love it.
Excited. I was like, ooh, that's cherries. The avocado, and she's had carrot. Now it's cherry.
I love it.
So for a decent amount of folks listening right now,
Yeah.
they are the kind of folks who listen to stuff like this all the time.
Mm.
And for another subgroup of those people, they feel that inspiration when they're listening to this kind of stuff. And then when they go to sleep or they're in their day or something happens, it just like the anxiety or the getting stuck in their head or the overwhelm. It's like I have to listen to this, but then when I'm not, this anxiousness comes up. I don't know what to do. I'm feeling stuck. I listen to all this stuff and it resonates with me. But then if y'all can't see me, I'm like shaking. Like, I don't know. And I've
Exactly.
too, so I'm identifying with folks too. What's up? Help us out here, Brian.
Yeah. It all stems from a belief system. We've all seen that depiction of an iceberg, right? Where maybe you didn't realize it or you haven't, but you can go look it up. You can message me and we can talk through it. But imagine an iceberg, and on the bottom of that iceberg are all the emotions or beliefs or like that gut feeling that you have in you. And you're like, man, like, I feel like I should be moving this way. Like that felt really good on Tom's podcast. Like I don't know what's going on. And all that is your body and your mind is telling you that there's a belief in you that you've always had. And it stemmed from typically birth to 6. The time that a child is born to the age of 6 is when their environment is so important, when their beliefs that they instill, the senses that they're having from their parents and what they're doing, like that is a pivotal time, because a lot of adults, especially millennials, either anyone in the 30s, 40s, 50s, that are kind of in this quote unquote midlife crisis of like, man, I thought I was good, but now I'm like having to revisit a lot of things. You have to go back to that childhood or that adolescence, because you had beliefs of wanting to be something or do something, or, you didn't know what anxiety was. You didn't know what depression was. You didn't know what these things were. You were just a happy-go-lucky kid until experiences and people and more things begin to trigger on your life. And that's where that happens. But most people don't reside there. That's 90%. They reside on the surface of the 10% of conscious thought of what's going on externally or what's going on to a feeling. And I tell people all the time that a feeling and emotion is not the same. So when people during this time of COVID, they're like, well, I feel overwhelmed, or everything feels heavy, or like, I don't feel like doing this. I'm like, it's not true. And they're like, what do you mean it's not true? I feel it. And I'm like, that's an interpretation. The definition of a feeling is an interpretation of an emotion. So where does that emotion stem from? The emotion stems from a deep subconscious belief that you haven't reached back to. So that emotion is something along the lines of, well, are you fearful? That's an emotion. Are you in pain from how your parents brought you up? Or maybe somebody said something to you, or how you feel about your body, or there's something there deeply rooted that you haven't reached back towards, to where that feeling just comes out of nowhere. Like that's where a panic attack comes. That's where like you get the sweaty palms out of nowhere. Like you're like, why do I feel this way? Like I should be confident. I have the credentials. I don't know why I'm doing this. So that's where, Tom, to answer your question directly, I wanted to preface that story, or the context is because if they're listening right now, we're telling what's being said or what's being resonated with them through voice, through video, is trying to reach that subconscious belief or emotion back in their childhood or adolescence. But then when they leave, again, what overpowers? Oh man, I got to handle this. I got to pay the bills. I got COVID hit. What's going to happen going forward? Like that is deeply on the surface, that it just comes back up. So then you go back to what we call quote unquote reality. Like I'm back to reality. It's Monday again. It's Friday. Like all these things that we're telling ourselves, we don't know that it's only arising more of that conscious mind, that we need to tap into those emotions that most people, especially men, that could be a whole story. Men are suppressing during this time because women, they want all the help. They'll cry, they'll go to their girlfriends, but men, I'm strong. I can handle it. I don't need this. I'm good. All of that. So it's a lot of unpacking that if we don't unpack, we see the disparity in our leadership now, not just political, but just leaders in general are now crumbling because what's happening? They thought they had everything under control. And now when everything's not under control, I need time to myself. I need to break away. I need a vacation. Like all those sayings, all that's telling me is that you haven't tapped into your adolescence or what's really going on because you're scared and you're fearful of the truth coming to the surface, right? So that's where that happens. If someone leaves right now, it's like, man, what's really going on? So
I appreciate that. And I do want to jump into the manhood part of it, men and mental health. But first, just want to cover a couple of things that you mentioned. Run that back again, what you were saying about feelings and emotions. The difference.
Great.
There was like a real nice phrase that you said there. For those of us who wait, what was that?
Wait, what was that?
Yeah, what was that?
Yeah. So people like to tie in feelings and emotions as the same thing, right? I don't want to be emotionally charged, or I don't want to express emotions, all those things. But we use the word feeling to kind of, in our terms, describe emotions, right? So I don't feel like it. I feel overwhelmed. I feel anxious. I feel a little bit depressed. I don't feel good today. Every time I hear the word feel, that means you're interpreting something. So just say, I'm feeling anxious. You never dive into the actual emotion of why you're feeling anxious. So an anxious emotion might be, I'm scared. That's the first step I teach my clients, I tell anyone, is that the acknowledgement of that is the first step. The second step is accepting that. So if you're feeling anxious or overwhelmed, you've got to tell yourself a second question. Okay, what's the emotion? The emotion is, I'm scared. If you don't say that or acknowledge that or write that or visualize that, you're suppressing. And what will happen? You are now you're tying into what you're feeling is, oh, I'm anxious. I guess I'm just going to have to deal with it today. No, you need to deal with the scarcity. Like, it's not the anxiousness, it's the scarcity factor of why you're scared. Is it scared because, well, I don't want to feel judged? Okay, now we're diving a little bit deeper, right? Why is that? Well, actually, you were judged from your parents as a child. And you're like, oh my goodness, I did not even think that that's all the way tied into why I'm anxious, right? So it's just diving deeper, but people don't want to go on that alone, or they don't want to dive into that at all.
What is neuro-linguistic programming? So now it sounds real nice in the bio. I like it.
Yeah. So neuro-linguistic programming is the process of thought and understanding thought. So that makes a lot of sense as I'm talking to you, Tom, and to anyone that's listening or watching, is that, man, he's talking a lot about our thoughts and about thinking and about what's going on upstairs in my mind. And that's what essentially is understanding the thought, and then understanding how the linguistic portion is how we transcribe that to ourselves and to the world. So neuro, brain, linguistic processing, and then how to reprogram that. So the programming is, okay, I'm thinking a certain way. I'm saying things to myself. I'm not doing what I need to do. I don't know my purpose. I can't function. Okay, well, we need to reprogram that, right? So there's a lot of tools that you can use to reprogram that.
So how does someone who's like an NLP expert, or that's their modality, how might you, like, how do you approach something? How is it different? Why even have it?
Yeah. Great question. So hopefully everyone's listening, like they're very attentive. They're maybe on the edge of their seats listening right now, because there's this thought that obviously therapy is very necessary right during these times. And more recently, as the past couple of years, there's a lot of people that have therapists. There's a lot of people that are seeking therapy now. And you're wondering, well, okay, I don't feel like I'm getting all that I need from therapy. I'm understanding the problem. I'm understanding what's going on in a sense, but a life coach or somebody that is an NLP expert is trying to get you to a point where you can shift that, right? So a lot of people, and there's good therapists, there's therapists that I believe need improvement because you're talking constantly about the problem and you never move into an actionable step that you can take, right? So what I say to people is that you've got to have a shift there, and that's where the NLP expert comes into play. That's where the person moves forward with an actionable step, and you have some sense of a breakthrough or a transformation, as a lot of people will call it in the space.
So how is that though different than you were sharing, going back in your childhood and figuring out where this comes from? That sounds a lot to me like, talking out
Yeah.
the problem, or talk therapy, or here's this thing that happened, when I was 5
Yeah.
and now I'm 40. How is that different though than what you're saying? Is that NLP?
Yeah.
Talk to me a
So
little bit.
one practicality or modality to kind of give some people some visual context is a practice called anchoring. Okay. There are some therapists, some counselors or psychologists that may use this tactic, but it's talked a lot about during NLP. NLP can be used in sales, marketing. Essentially, you're trying to get people to change their behavior in some context by understanding their thought and you transcribing that thought back to them. So in this instance, for instance, someone is like, I feel anxious. I keep liking to use this because people can resonate with that. I feel anxious. An anchor would be something along the lines of, if you're watching or listening, I have my fist up right now. Okay. You might not recognize this, but if you're a Tony Robbins fan, if you're an entrepreneur, or if you are a sports fan, there's a sports person that might kiss up to the sky. That's an anchor. If Tony Robbins pounds his chest before he goes out on stage, that's an anchor. What that is saying is that is the acknowledgement piece that, hey, I'm scared about to go on this stage. Hey, I'm scared about to go up to bat. But by me anchoring that, I'm anchoring an emotion, a deep belief into me. So for me, if I hold my fist up and anchor into my heart, that's anchoring the fact that, Brian, you have the confidence, you have the belief, you have the credentials, you have this. And as I'm doing that physical motion, it's actually subconsciously pulling that belief back out of me. And I'm able to speak more confidently. I'm able to show up a little bit better because I anchored something into me.
So kind of like a positive trigger rather than
Exactly.
okay.
Exactly.
So you brought him up. I think
Yep.
anybody who's heard of NLP, not anybody, but most folks discover NLP through Tony Robbins.
Yep.
So what would you say that is there anything you want to clarify or emphasize or anything for folks who like see them as one? Tony Robbins, NLP, they're the same thing. What might you want to add to that?
I'm trying to understand your question a little bit. If you mind me asking again.
Nope. I just ask things once.
Hey, I'd pull it out, man.
So, there's anytime you have somebody who's a big personality,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
You're going to have connotations of that person: negative, positive, problematic, awesomematic,
Yeah.
whatever, So then for folks who are kind of like combining that when they think of neuro-linguistic programming, that is everything Tony Robbins does is neuro-linguistic programming. Oh, you're basically talking about what Tony Robbins does. For folks like that who are listening, who are either saying, that's awesome, who are instantly tuning out, what might you want to clarify? Or you can be like, I got nothing, next question.
No.
You want to clarify in there about
Yeah.
awesome what he does or this is terrible what he does, and, just kind of pulling out the tool from the person, if that makes sense.
No, that's a great question. I understand now. So I appreciate the clarification. I think that a lot of people will interpret that it's always coming from a professional, that, oh, wow, I need to be a recipient of NLP. If somebody's talking about NLP, they're trying to read me, or they're trying to coach me all the time, or they're trying to dive in, and every question they ask is trying to have some deep contextual answer. And the premise of NLP is definitely a personal development self tool first. So anyone that practices it is really doing personal development and self-development first. So it's essentially based upon the premise that you are creating the life of your dreams, or creating the life by understanding more about yourself, understanding the emotions that are stemmed there, understanding what's going on in the brain and in your mind from the neural standpoint. And then how are you speaking that out into the world? Like, what are you telling yourself on a daily basis? So are you being yourself? Or are you having this mask on constantly and you're withholding the truth, and then you're going out into the world? So that's what I would clarify a little bit, is that Tony Robbins is definitely one example of that, or that's where people's minds go, because he's very boastful. Like he uses the mirroring and matching technique of where you try to match someone's emotions so you can gain more trust and empathy from them, so you can get them to change their behavior, all those different things. So it can be used in many different contexts, but it's personal development. You can use it upon yourself first.
I dig that. I like that clarification that these are tools that you can use with yourself, by yourself. You don't need to have a saint or a priest or an imam.
Exactly.
Like, you don't have, like, this is for you. It's yours.
Exactly.
Take it. Use it yourself. I like that.
Exactly.
Okay, let's jump into what you had started to talk about, and I wanted to bring up too. I saw it on your Instagram. Mental health in men. Why is this something that we avoid? That how does this tie into masculinity, manhood? Anything you want to speak to on that?
Yeah, great question. I think the biggest thing or misconception is that we are in times where there's a transitional period. We have the millennial generation, which are becoming more the leaders now, and the voices that need to step up from the black male and the white male and the Hispanic male and the Asian male. But we were raised by a generation that had this concept: if you had a man or a mentor in your life, which is another whole discussion, to where there are men that didn't have a male example. So they were watching a lot of media of how a male presented, how he treated, the information that we are receiving, whether it be through music or culture or whatnot, that influences a man. So a man typically now is said that we need to protect, provide, and somehow show that a man has only this one kind of persona. Even the way we speak, a man has to speak a certain way, very boastful. If a child had a higher pitched tone and he didn't hit puberty or a certain age, he would get picked on, right? So all these different things about what defines manhood, in my personal opinion, has affected the way men are leading now. And it's not very from in my opinion, a very good place, because there's a lot of suppression going on, and that's not a good place to lead from, because at some point it's going to blow up in your face. And we get surprised when we see a media outlet that says, headline of someone we respected, either be a mogul or, a businessman or a mentor or a priest or somebody that's leading in a certain way. And we're like, oh my goodness. It's because that mask has been up for so long. But now what I'm trying to get our men to do is open up and to have this space of being vulnerable, which describes, as you were stating, the difference between masculinity and femininity. A man can have feminine ways of being, which I think a man should embody a little bit more, which is essentially how to be more receivable, or being able to receive more emotions from his spouse, being able to receive more emotions from his employees, being able to receive more emotion from whoever he's speaking with, whether it be another man, and not avoid that, right? But a lot of that avoidance comes from a man not maybe having a man in his life, or how his father treated him, or how his teacher or whoever he looked up to, that's the only example that they had. So we get surprised by how men act, but in reality, all we have to ask the question is, well, who's your mentor? Who are the men around you? And I begin to get this view like, oh, well, that makes a lot of sense. Right. So I constantly try to surround myself with men that are very open to their emotions, and not being able to express that concerns me, because that tells me that there's going to be an explosion at some point. So there's a lot of context there, but that's my biggest thing now. And it's hard because, to be honest with you, 80 to 90%, just to be transparent, 80 to 90% of my clientele or people that reach out to me are women. Right. So the men are looking from the outside saying, man, I need to get some from Brian. Hey, I'm going to open up his email, but I don't want him to see me. Hey, I might shoot him a DM, but I'm not asking any question. I need support or help. So, yep.
I think this is, when we talk about, there's a lot of isms packed into when you say men.
Yep.
Sexism, patriarchy,
Yep.
transphobia, homophobia, all of that's there. And that the process of socializing a cis straight man, whether you fit that or not, socializing someone into that box is such a violent process.
Oh my goodness.
You venture out in any way, you will be punished, like by society. Like it's designed that way.
Yes.
And so what I'm hearing you say is talking about mental health is not in that box. And so just to get the health that you need to find a way to break out of this box. And therefore it's a risk. There is a risk that could have repercussions.
Yep.
So why should I take that risk then? Why should I potentially face ridicule, rejection, go down a rabbit hole of answering questions that might lead to me being ostracized, or realizing that this is a facade, or what is how you say it, facade or
facade?
Facade, yeah.
Yeah.
Or the other thing is that in my, how I've been operating as a man, I have hurt people, whether through my own sexism, whether through violence, whatever, that I have also hurt people. I think there's a lot of that wrapped up in when you start to examine all these things. So why take that risk?
Wow. I think the biggest thing, again, it goes back to my question is, how long do you want to live in a body or in a space to where you never know who you truly are? And I have to paint this picture for people because it comes so late in life. I mean, we see the elderly, we see men that are on their deathbed. And just to be very transparent, the last questions or thoughts could be of like, well, wow, I wish I would have done more, or I wish I would have done this. And the risk that you're taking, if you take it quick enough, it doesn't matter if you're 20, doesn't matter if you're 30, doesn't matter if you're 40, doesn't matter if you're 50. As a man, whenever you take it, tomorrow could be a revelation to where you begin to discover who you truly are. So that risk, every risk has a reward, right? In my personal opinion. And the reward on the other end, to me, is to be able to live out a life to where you don't have to run from anymore, right? So that to me is worth it to take that risk, in my personal opinion.
Well, maybe if you don't mind, and I'm willing to go on the journey with you if you'd like.
Yeah.
We can share both ourselves. What for you has been the reward of taking that risk, of talking about mental health, of embracing it, of going down this road and leaving the box of masculinity? What's been the reward for you?
Wow. I think the openness of connection with individuals that I would have never connected with prior because of how I was showing up, how I was presenting myself. And I don't think I always had this diverse way of thinking, or I had a lot of diversity around me growing up, from different ethnicities, from different beliefs. But to me, my presence of opening my arms to the opportunity of connecting with somebody and hearing them out, that stemmed very early, but I don't think that I was really embracing what that was. So even at Morehouse, I mean, you think about it from an all male institution, there were a lot of men that were homosexual. Right. So me being exposed to that at a very early age, especially as a Black man, I'm like, what in the world? And it was never taught to me, but I was more so intrigued, and I began to open up as to, wow, I really want to learn more about this individual and their beliefs. If we do that, I think even during this time, I think a lot of people are trying to say, hey, I didn't grow up that way. I don't know what it feels like to be, ostracized. I don't know what it feels like to be oppressed, because I don't even know what the word oppressed looks like or feels like, or I don't even know what it really means. I want to just listen to your story. If we do more of that, that's where, to me, changed me forever, as I began to just listen to people's stories and ask, and hey, tell me where you're from. Tell me about, how you grew up and all of that. And who doesn't want to talk about themselves, because maybe no one's ever asked them that, because everyone's so selfish. They want to talk about themselves all day, what they do, how much they make, what car they drive, where they live, right? But they never go into like who they are versus what they do.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'd say for me then, if I'm going to follow
Yep.
through on my promise too, I think integrity, if we look at integrity as the alignment of your values
Mm-hmm.
and your actions, that's a really great place to be in. And I had really great values because of people like my grandma and the people who raised me. But when I was conforming to masculinity and really this violent form of what it means to be a man, this box, that very often my actions were not in alignment with those values.
Yes.
And so the more I was willing to step out of that box at the risk of losing friends and ostracization and being disowned by certain family members, all those kind of things, that the reward that was at the other end is, like, when I think back to the people that I've harmed mentally and physically, that I think if I could have just taken this journey sooner, I could have avoided hurting people.
Yep.
And on the other end of it, then instead, I could have been there for those people who trusted me in a way that's uplifting, like I hope I am now. So every time, it's a continual journey where I'm like, ooh, that's a sexist, or, and I'm not trying to portray masculinity or being way on the spectrum of I'm very masculine. You can be very masculine and still be, not a part of the patriarchy. So I think the more I evolve into that, the more I get to see my values aligning with my actions. And so that's, to me, for folks out there, that's the reward that you get is pride rather than regret. So that's my little sales job, folks, of
I love it. I love it. I love it.
So, I think it's important to talk about how, when we talk about masculinity, that all of our experiences as men aren't the same, right?
Yes.
So especially right now, and I think I almost hate the word especially right now, because when we talk about racism, especially right now just means that it's more obvious to people who weren't looking. Whereas it's been this bad since the beginning. It hasn't gotten, it's just that more people are now aware. But you're seeing a lot of studies come out of, while the the ability to record violence being perpetuated on Black people helps to raise awareness, there is also the added factor of the trauma that it causes, of these videos constantly reposted, of knowing that could have been you. What do you think is if we're going to take this conversation deeper, more than just men in general, or that Black men who are wondering, is it even safe for me to worry about mental health? I'm just trying to survive. If I even try to be vulnerable, the world is not a safe place for me to be vulnerable. That's a question I get a lot from young people I work with, that it's not safe for me to be vulnerable at the time. I have to protect myself. What are any reflections that you are comfortable sharing around that?
Yeah, I will say that the Black man specifically, going back to, just dawn of time before slavery, I do believe that the Black man was always ostracized or oppressed in some way. But I don't think people understand the severity of having constantly to protect and provide, and the thought processes that go when you just simply wake up on a daily basis. I think it's become more aware now, as a lot of things have been brought to the surface. But when you mentioned bringing up these videos and constantly wondering, well, could this be me? You mentioned something earlier to where you said every man's experience is different, right? So for me, growing up, I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama, right? I didn't experience a lot of very direct racism per se. Um, I had a very diverse group of friends, but it was subconsciously ingrained in the culture that it was still there, right? So you felt it, but it was never really present per se because I grew up in the city. Now, if you go to rural Alabama, you might see some things, but my experience was very, very, I guess I had a lot of exposure to what this really meant. Like I opened up my Alabama history book and I remember seeing, and I will credit this to my brother, my younger brother. He posted something when this first happened. He said, imagine opening up a history book and you're 8 or 9 years old, and the first thing you see somebody that looks like you is in chains. So that thought, and we've now known that removal of history has been going on around the country to where that wasn't even taught. So for me, I knew this. So when this arose, I'm like, this is nothing new. I've seen pictures, I've seen videos, I've watched movies, I understood what was happening. So when I see, videos that are disturbing, I'm like, this is just a replaying of something that is now being caught. This has never been solved. But for somebody that was African American, that was Black, that grew up on the West Coast, or grew up in the North, or grew up in the Midwest, that never even saw this growing up, or it wasn't even talked about. I mean, I had the civil right. I mean, every time I went to Birmingham, you're looking at history, right? So that is a complete different experience. So when I see a lot of my Black men or Black counterparts, my Black women, and they're like, I just can't watch this. I'm heavy. I don't know how to handle this. The only thought I say is, well, why can't you? And the only response typically is like, I didn't grow up with this around me. Like I knew it was there, but I've never like understood or seen it as drastic or graphic as this.
What is the conversation we should be having with men and mental health, or what are the issues men and mental health are facing? But I don't want to just like paint all men's experiences that are the exact same, because when we start to talk about things like racism or homophobia or heterosexism, like that, we do all have nuanced experiences. And so specifically around race, if there was anything that you wanted to talk about to add further nuance or depth, I just wanted to give an opportunity for you to speak to that if you want.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. I think the biggest thing when people are trying to deal with these many different avenues of trying to define their manhood is to ask where this hate is coming from. Because I like to make things very, very simple. If you have a hate against homophobia, or excuse me, if you have homophobia or you have this hate against homosexuality, then where does that stem from? Well, it's my beliefs, Brian. Well, if I'm a man of God too, so if your beliefs, if the root is loving on people, and I don't want to get too much into spirituality because I don't know who's listening right now, but if you're understanding the word, it can be interpreted in whatever experience or way that you like. So it's all based on how that was transcribed to you, as to you will be condemned if you go down this route. But the root, I believe, is that you have love for all people. So where is your stem of hate coming from? And why does that affect you so much? If it's that person, if they're happy, if they are living out their life, why does that affect you? So to me, every problem that a person has is always reverted back to themselves. And that's hard for people to realize, especially men, is that if you have hate for a certain type of woman, if you have hate for a certain type of race, if you have some sense of why something should be done a certain way, if you have a certain political belief, all of these, you're trying to push that on somebody where somebody's beliefs and their experiences are completely different from yours. So you're wondering why people don't change, why they don't believe what you believe, because you haven't even listened before. And that stems from potentially your masculine energy overpowering your feminine energy of trying to just simply, I'm just going to let go and listen. So it's a hard thing to change because it's so deeply rooted, Tom, that I think, a lot of work needs to be done for our men specifically. And it's hurting our women too, because they're trying to change the man, or they're trying to raise men when that shouldn't be happening, when we should be helping ourselves.
So I appreciate you sharing that. One thing I wanted to just double back to is when we were talking about the mental impact, or the mental health impact that these traumatic videos have, where they're reposted and reshared for Black and brown people that have to see this violence, the secondhand trauma, or the trauma that it causes again. Some folks, just wanted to clarify, when you were sharing that one of the issues of that is avoidance.
Mm-hmm.
Some folks that I've heard those share that, like, it shouldn't have to be that we have to watch that. We already know the violence that we're facing.
Yeah.
It being reposted as a part of the perpetuation of white supremacy, or the violence of racism. Is there anything you wanted to add or share on that?
Yeah. So I never want to impose my experiences on someone else. I always want to lead with empathy first. And that means that anyone listening right now, if they feel like, Brian, I don't agree, I don't know how, I don't have the practicality of steps that you can just handle this and be able to continue life on. And I will say the first thing is that, yes, these things are being perpetuated. They are being shown in a graphic manner to instill this white supremacy that where you just don't have the practical steps yet. And I want to give you the space to say that I can't handle this. So I always acknowledge that whatever experiences or someone else has had, you can remove yourself temporarily. But my one thing that I ask of you is that when you remove yourself, what work are you doing? So when I said the avoidance piece, a lot of people maybe avoided or moved themselves and went into another thing that wasn't serving them. Right. So what can you do to maybe learn more, or what can you do to bring joy to your life, to maybe relieve that pain for a moment, but make sure it's good, make sure it's serving you in the right way. So learning a new skill set, learning the ability to how you can help during these times is what I really wanted to clarify. So if you are feeling that, I don't want that to be taken in any way that my experience is, Brian, you're sounding very confident here. You're sounding very in a way that I can't practice yet. So you're right where you need to be, but you can do the work too.
So if I might, just to make sure I understand what you're saying, and then I think
Yep.
we can apply this to the specific situation, but then broader, is that whatever is something that might be triggering or causing pain, that not that you have to then put yourself through that, but what you mean by avoiding is we shouldn't ignore the feelings that are coming up within us. Don't avoid that, rather than you have to watch this, otherwise you're an avoider, more than the feelings that are coming up from it.
The feelings that are coming. Yes. Okay. You can avoid the situation that's going on for a temporary, but never remove or suppress that feeling that's going on, and really embody, like we talked about previously, what that really means. So you can, begin to heal that.
I love that. I'm glad we touched base on that, because that's a really good aha. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So we've really covered some really awesome topics on this. I love it.
We dove into a hole here. People are probably listening like, how did we get here?
I would say if they've listened to episodes of this before, they're like, they're on the ride with us. They know we're going to go on lots of different avenues.
I love it.
Is there anything we haven't talked about that's on your heart that you wanted to speak to?
Yeah, great question. First of all, again, acknowledging that anyone has remained on this for this duration of time. I appreciate you just listening to my story. I think for me, we were diving into some deep topics, but the transition into kind of the actual work that I do, or how do I help people, and where these titles come from, I think is something that all ties in together. So when I see people trying to live out their purpose, right? So now we've kind of touched on the mental kind of illness or health piece, which are two different things. The mental health piece is kind of the awareness, right, of what's going on. So it might not be true. And then the mental illness is where people are actually diagnosed. It holds a lot of people back from really prospering or doing what they want to do. So I think that's where we have to address it, because I get people all the time, and maybe you do as well, Tom, is, you're helping people with their ads or helping people prosper in their business, and you're wondering why someone can't function or can't do what the simplicity of business structure requires them to do, or they can't do their job at a high level because they don't know how to interact with their colleagues. They don't know how to speak to people. They don't know how to take criticism. Like, all those things are reverting back to what you were subconsciously suppressing on your emotions. So life should not be this difficult, but it is, and we're here, right? So that's where I really want to bring all those things together, is that it affects your relationships. It affects the way you are moving up the ladder in your business or your career. It affects what you truly want to do, how you're raising your kids, how you're speaking to your spouse, how do you treat people around you, your friendships, your sphere of influence. It affects everything if you don't understand you. And so that's where I say that entrepreneurship, or just diving into what you truly want to do, it's a personal growth journey. I mean, that's what it's really taught me, because I can even imagine, Tom, 4 years ago, I wouldn't have been nearly who I am now in the knowledge base and kind of the wisdom that I have if I wouldn't have gone down this journey. And not to say everyone is going to be an entrepreneur, but you have to dive into you a little bit more, or there will be some self-destruction. There will be some regret. There will be some hurting of people that you love along the way if you don't.
Wait, you left the pharmacy industry, all that stuff happened 4 years ago?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I thought that was a while ago.
No. So that's another thing, is that how quickly things happen. So 4 years ago, 2016 is when I finished pharmacy school. So it has transpired into something that I never would have thought. And I know maybe I always like to touch on something that maybe I didn't answer. I mentioned relationships, right? So I was in an 8-year relationship with my college sweetheart. I came home one night and we were engaged at this point in Dallas. That's why I ended up in Dallas, is for her. So maybe some of my men can resonate with this, and my couples that are listening, is that you're trying to manage your life, but now you have another whole person, or maybe little ones, that you're trying to manage, but also pursue your dreams. So I came home one night and she was completely gone. Like, all her stuff was gone, everything. We were living together. We were engaged. We had a little puppy together. And I just sat there, and that's when another pivotal point happened. So imagine, in a time span of you being happy, you getting this 6-figure job, you decide that you leave that for the pursuit of your purpose, and you're doing fairly well. And then you're thinking, man, I'm going to build this family. I've had this history with this person, and you've got to start completely over. Not only you started your life over from a business or career standpoint, but now you have to start your whole personal growth journey over. And who you're supposed to be with, and am I going to be alone, and all these different thoughts that come into your mind while keeping everything together to move forward. So there's a lot of unhappy people, Tom, in this world, that are with people simply for the fact that, they're here, or I don't want to be alone, but yet they're unhappy. So what I noticed is that there were a lot of things going back into that I knew that maybe I needed to work on, but also that my mom always told me, when a person shows you who they are at the beginning, that's who they are. Right. So I began to give excuses and all these things because we looked like the power couple. Right. She had her master's. She went to Spelman. We looked good together, all these things. And that's where I noticed that I was at fault for letting these things slide. And that's where my belief came in, from a spiritual standpoint, that if you aren't going to do the work, it's going to be removed for you. And that's where I said, well, dang, God was moving something for me to make space and room for what he's been trying to show me. And people began to come into my life. 2019, when this happened during Christmas time of 2018. So I was going into a whole new year. And 2019 was my best year of business, for new relationships, for speaking engagements, for stages, for my podcast. Everything began to just free up. And it's just been amazing. So I tell people all the time that everything ties in together of how, you need to uncover what you are doing, how you're putting yourself out into the world, but also how the people around you that you're keeping company, are they there for a purpose? And as you know, Tom, being an entrepreneur, you have to reassess the 5 people around you at all times as you grow to say, hey, maybe we need to create some space, or this is just an acquaintance now. We'll keep in touch, but I need to replace to keep continuously grow. So that's that's a culmination of how everything tied in there.
How did you, this always happens. This is like,
Yeah.
where you're like leaving and you're like in the parking lot, like, I'll see you later. I'll see you
Yeah.
later in the parking
It's
lot.
like, oh man.
Then you're in the car. You're like, one more thing. That's not
I love it. I love it.
How do you not let, because I'm sure there's people right now that have been in a relationship or
Yep.
they've been in a job for all these years without any
Yep.
explanation. They're just fired. How did you not let them, first of all, wanting that closure, if it's just like, that's like the ultimate ghosting. And how did it not become where it took you a year of like just devastation to it's finally like, and then a year later, I was like, let me try this. What did you do?
Yeah. So actual practical steps, kind of creating a visual for you guys that are listening, because you can imagine, and you can maybe imagine yourself in my position. You walk in, you see everything gone, and there were only a few pieces, obviously, that were yours. And I said, Brian, that's when my emotions took over. But also, I knew from my coaching, because I had been a year into coaching at that point, that I was always trying to include mindset within my health coaching. That was when I had my health coaching business. I remember in that moment saying, this is the moment that you have to practice what you preach. And I remember kneeling down, and I remember that the first question I asked was going to be the most important question. And that question was not to run, not to, just continue life as it needed to be, and I'll handle this later. That was a moment to be very present. And I remember I remember kneeling in this apartment, and I remember saying that, Brian, what could you have done better? What can you do to improve upon this opportunity? And what did I do? I didn't inflict blame, or I didn't, that was that person's choice, right? So what we like to do when things happen to us, we begin to inflict blame upon a company, a boss, a spouse, a girlfriend, whoever, right? That they did this to me. And I said, Brian, why is this happening for you? Like, what is going on here? Like, what is someone trying to tell you? What could you have improved upon? And that's when my journey started more deeply, Tom, as to, who Brian was, what he needed to do better. And the first question, or first thing I did the next day, is said, I'm going to communicate better, right? Because that's the first thing I acknowledged to myself, is that, Brian, there were a lot of things you were suppressing when we would have an argument. Oh, let's just go out to dinner. Oh, it's fine. We'll handle this later. I'm so sorry. Right? Like, love will solve everything, and we see people now in a virtual space for social, is that first thing I see when this beautiful picture of this beautiful family perfectly set up, I'm like, who are they? What's going on? Because they can be happy, but this perfect picture paints a picture in people's minds that that's all you need is to smile. But the hard conversations were never had. So I immediately in 2019, if anyone's listening right now, they know that something changed, because I began to call more people. I only do voice messages now. I don't do text messages. Hey, can we hop on the phone really quick? Hey, I have a weekly wisdom walk with one of my good friends that we have every single Wednesday. And I'm about to go on today after this, that we talk and we communicate. And I begin to dive into NLP, and I said, I'm going to be the best communicator as possible. And what that happened, I began to speak on more stages. I began to speak on more podcasts. My podcast interviews became a little bit better because I became intrigued. So if you're struggling right now, the first step I say to yourself is, as hard as it's going to be, what and why did this happen for me instead of to me? That's the first question. And you'll uncover what you could have improved upon. And that's how you allow that person or entity to be released from, whatever happened, and you can move forward. and you don't have that constantly building upon you. Now, that's not to say that it's not going to come back. It took me a while, but I also embarked on celibacy for a year. So any of my men that are listening right now, I said, Brian, every woman that you encounter, now that you are a free man, you are going to communicate with them and treat them as a person. Not that I ever did. I always was raised that way, but I didn't become in this replacement mode. Like, hey, I want to date you. I want to date you. Hey, let's go out for dinner. No. Hey, can we go out for coffee, tea? Hey, can we talk really quick? Hey, I'd love to know more about you. And women were like, who is this guy? In a good way, but like I always remove that barrier. So you've got to do something drastically different if it's a job or it's in a relational situation.
Whew, so many gems. I'd say one of the big things that I'm hearing from you is having the courage to ask yourself. Background noise?
Little one.
One of the things big takeaways that I'm having from this is to have that courage to ask the internal questions, whether it's why, whether it's where's this coming from, whether it's what do I want, whether it's, changing the quality of the questions that you're asking yourself as well, instead of why is this happening to me? Why is it happening for me? Yep. So Brian, I want to thank you so much for stopping by. For the folks who are like, I'm in, where can I be a part of Brian's life? How can they do that?
Yeah, man, I appreciate you again. Thank you for anyone that's listening and has continued to listen throughout this. So you can find me on all the social platforms, Instagram, LinkedIn for more of a professional setting, Facebook and Twitter. I'm very active on there actually. To share my thoughts about what's going on internally for me and how you can benefit from that. I have my website. It's www.brianmceldery.com, and maybe Tom will have it down in the show notes for you. And then I have courses. I have my book that you can pre-order currently. It's called The Purpose Shift. And it shows you kind of how to live more intentionally and how to discover this thing that we talked about and give practical steps. And we're in the process of making sure that comes out very, very soon in the coming months, because during COVID, a lot of people's things have been pushed back, but I'm excited for that. And then also I have my coaching, but I just love to have conversations with people. So if you're interested, or you just want to say, hey, I was on the podcast listening, I just want to pick your brain, I'm here for you as well.
Show notes for all the folks who are on the go, couldn't get all that, TomReal.com/Brian, TomReal.com/BRYAN, TomReal.com/Brian. Hit Brian up, send him a DM, take one of his courses, support his stuff. But, like you said, most importantly, send him a voice message on IG and say what's up. Yourself.
Love it.
Brian, I want to thank you once again for all that you shared with us, for going on the journey that was this interview together. Yeah. I really appreciate it. I know folks got a ton of value out of this. So from me and all those listening, I want to share my gratitude with you. So thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you everyone for listening. I appreciate it.
Of course. So Brian, our closing ritual is to share with the folks who are listening, what is your invitation? What would you like to invite them to consider, to do, to think about, to become, to evolve into, to ask themselves? Yeah. What's your invitation?
My invitation to you is to not run, but yet asking and question yourself and who you are. And as Tom said, he kind of took the words out of my mouth, ask different questions. So what do you want? Who are you versus what do you do? And when you ask those, you will be very uncomfortable, but you will see that it will bring something out of you to where you can dive a little bit deeper into really what you're supposed to be doing on this earth, in my personal opinion.
I mean, I love that. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate you.
You're very welcome.
And to all of those who are listening, as always, we're wishing you peace and blessings. Thank you. Oh, one more thing. I'd love to continue the conversation. Feel free to join me at TomEarl.com/join. Subscribe below, or let's connect on social media. Tom Earl Artist. Thanks again for watching.